Sometimes the world really doesn't need yet another bold reimagining of a story we've all seen 10 times already. While studios may have thought a new logo and darker lighting would make all the difference, these overhyped reboots sadly didn't cut it.
We're a team now, and there's 4 of us, so we should come up with a name for it.
A year before Josh Trank's Fantastic Four hit theaters, producer Simon Kinberg began hyping up the tentpole as the ultimate comic book movie by promising it would pay tribute to every era of the character's Marvel Comics history. Meanwhile, 20th Century Fox tried to get the film some extra juice by signaling that Fantastic Four could lead to larger crossovers between the quartet and the X-Men movie franchise. In other words, Fox's Marvel heroes were now entering their own bigger universe. All of these elements were designed to drum up even more excitement for a feature that was generating tons of buzz and attention ahead of its debut. There was so much buzz, in fact, that the teaser trailer briefly held the record as the most watched 20th Century Fox trailer ever. Ultimately, though, none of this promotional effort positively impacted the final product. Grossing $167 million worldwide on a $120 million budget, this was one reboot whose financial endpoint was anything but fantastic.
The thing that nobody wanted.
2024's The Crow remake languished in development for ages, going through filmmakers and leading men at an alarming pace. In its earliest days, producer Ryan Kavanagh promised that this 21st century Crow would emulate Batman Begins in style and scope. Over a decade later, the project's eventual director, Rupert Sanders, would grease the marketing wheels on this new Crow by claiming that it was more of an indie film than a traditional blockbuster. In other words, fans of unorthodox art house cinema were encouraged to buy their Crow tickets ASAP. Leading man Bill Skarsgård told Esquire that the movie's ending was overhauled to open the door for sequels. The Crow's various financiers were confident this film would become a new superhero movie franchise, much like how the Brandon Lee Crow film inspired a flood of follow-ups. But none of this was enough to convince people to see The Crow in theaters. In its worldwide run, the ill-fated reboot only grossed $24 million on a $50 million budget, a catastrophic result that immediately silenced all murmurs of sequels. Longtime fans just didn't want to see a Crow movie that didn't involve Brandon Lee's version, while folks oblivious to the original Crow found the movie's marketing unengaging. Whether it was courting newcomers or die-hard fans, the movie failed on all fronts. 2017's The Mummy reboot wasn't just a movie. It was intended to launch a wider universe that would change Universal Pictures forever. This Alex Kurtzman directorial effort was the much-hyped launch of the Dark Universe. A critical title for Universal, The Mummy even secured the participation of mega movie star Tom Cruise. With the Mission Impossible lead aboard, The Mummy's producers hoped audiences would perceive the inaugural Dark Universe feature as a must-see cinematic event.
Show me the mummy!
Yes!
As with so many attempts at launching a cinematic universe, though, this one cratered at the box office. Worldwide, The Mummy only took in $410 million on a budget that allegedly topped out at $195 million, not including marketing costs. That $410 million figure was only slightly better than The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor's worldwide gross from 9 years earlier.
Fight like a man!
And that's before taking inflation into account. While Universal and Kurtzman were enamored with the idea of The Mummy spawning an avalanche of sequels and spin-offs, nobody stopped to inquire whether audiences really wanted a moodier, edgier take on The Mummy. It turned out they did not. The supreme confidence Warner Bros. Had in Pan was made apparent by the feature's initial mid-July release date. That's the same corridor the studio dominated from 2007 to 2013 with titles like The Dark Knight, 3 of the final 4 Harry Potter features, and Inception. If Warner Bros. Was launching a tentpole in mid-July, then the studio clearly saw it as a massive deal. The first Pan trailer launched over Thanksgiving 2014 alongside other major trailer debuts for Star Wars: The Force Awakens and Jurassic World. Being placed in such prolific company suggested the grand aspirations the studio had for this Joe Wright-directed fantasy film, even if its release date was ultimately delayed. Before it eventually bowed on October 9, 2015, Warner Bros. Reportedly spent an eye-popping $125 million promoting the title to worldwide audiences. All eyes were on Pan to see if it could become the studio's equivalent to Disney's 2010 live-action Alice in Wonderland. But despite extensive marketing efforts, Pan was a massive box office stud. Its global box office total reached $128.3 million, despite a cost of $150 million to produce. While Warner Brothers went into overdrive trying to sell the project to people, aspirations of Pan being the next Inception or Harry Potter were never going to come true. After 6 Resident Evil movies, Sony's reboot of the popular horror saga needed to do something drastic to get people's attention. The answer for those involved in 2021's Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City was to lean on the idea that this would be the film that finally, faithfully adapted the original Resident Evil video games. The pre-release promotion for Raccoon City hyped up how much this fresh movie would take its cues from the franchise's earliest games. Finally, audiences would get to see their favorite Resident Evil characters faithfully represented on the screen. Released as Sony's big Thanksgiving 2021 tentpole, Welcome to Raccoon City even tried to build up hype by having the film's director talk about his ambitions for potential sequels that would exploit even more Resident Evil lore. Unfortunately, none of this was enough to save the reboot at the box office. While previous Resident Evil movies had each topped anywhere from $100 million to $300 million at the box office, Raccoon City stalled out at $42 million globally on a $25 million budget. Endless pre-release headlines about Welcome to Raccoon City's faithfulness to Resident Evil games didn't move the needle when it came time for its box office run.
Something you're not supposed to see.
After an 8-year absence from the big screen, 2021 saw the G.I. Joe franchise return as a live-action movie property with Snake Eyes' G.I. Joe Origins. This project was, as headliner Henry Golding put it, a stepping stone into the G.I. Joe universe. The film already had lots of pressure on it to rebirth the G.I. Joe property on the silver screen, and then COVID-19 upended the entire entertainment landscape. The global health crisis pushed Snake Eyes from an October 2020 premiere to a July 2021 launch, which made it one of the first big tentpoles to debut theatrically after COVID-19 shut down movie theaters. Now an extra layer of pressure was on the title, which was also designed to build momentousness for G.I. Joe owner Hasbro. Snake Eyes was announced in early 2021 as a key piece in the toy manufacturer's larger media empire plans. With the G.I. Joe movies, Hasbro's corporate ambitions, and movie theaters all needing Snake Eyes to excel, it seems almost inevitable in hindsight that the film would come up short. A series of baffling creative decisions contributed to a toxic reception for the film that sank its box office chances. With a sub-$35 million worldwide gross, Snake Eyes disappointed in an epic way. 2011's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo proved a solid moneymaker while garnering 5 Oscars, including a Best Actress nod for Rooney Mara. But despite Mara and director David Fincher's passion for the franchise, follow-ups never materialized. Instead, the revamped Sony Pictures regime that took over in 2015 announced in 2017 a reboot/sequel that would kick off by adapting the 4th novel in the series, The Girl in the Spider's Web.
That won't be necessary.
This feature replaced Mara with Claire Foy and launched its marketing campaign in June 2018 at the height of summer movie-going season. This reboot was dubbed the biggest film project to date for both Foy and director Fede Alvarez by major media publications. And Sony's then ongoing box office woes meant that all eyes were on Spiderweb to see if it could finally create an ongoing franchise for the studio. While the high sales figures for The Girl in the Spider's Web literary source material meant that people were aware of this story, the box office results for Alvarez's directorial effort clearly indicated people weren't really interested in seeing it on the big screen. Months of promotion involving Foy weren't enough to keep The Girl in the Spider's Web from a disastrous box office haul. Grossing $35 million worldwide on a $43 million budget, Sony probably should have just pursued straightforward sequels to the 2011 film. The original RoboCop is one of the most beloved sci-fi films of all time, so rebooting it would be a daunting task that meant living up to one of the great pieces of satirical cinema. And that's just what the team behind 2014's RoboCop attempted.
My targeting system is a little messed up.
To try and get ahead of potentially negative buzz, Sony Columbia Pictures started its viral marketing campaign for RoboCop 2 whole years before its February 2014 theatrical release. As its debut drew closer and closer, other major marketing efforts, including a Super Bowl ad, were implemented to increase the omnipresent buzz surrounding this reboot.
You know what? This might actually tip this thing right into the net.
But no amount of tremendous marketing power and buzz over the new RoboCop could save this feature from a middling box office fate. Grossing just over $243 million worldwide on a $120 million budget, RoboCop didn't make nearly enough to revive the franchise long term. The biggest problem seems to be that so many people were content with the original R-rated RoboCop that a PG-13 remake felt unnecessary.
When you're making a film called Wolfman, it needs to be scary.
The hype for 2025's Wolfman, a reboot of the classic Universal horror film The Wolfman, was rooted in another 2020's Universal Monsters update. Writer-director Lee Whannell had previously delivered the inspired thriller The Invisible Man, which set a high bar for Wolfman to live up to. Inevitable pre-release discussion over whether or not Whannell's Wolfman could live up to his Invisible Man was paired with an avalanche of discourse surrounding the leaked appearance of the movie's titular monster. Universal's Halloween Horror Nights event appeared to accidentally reveal what this new Wolfman looked like. A radical approach to the hairy creature that caused nothing short of an uproar. These critiques grew so loud that Whannell felt forced to respond while promoting Wolfman, assuring fans that the haunted attraction's design was not, in fact, accurate. Combine all that with the usual massive marketing campaign that accompanies any modern Universal Pictures release, and Wolfman entered theaters in January 2025, with wildly varying levels of hope at its back.
But then suddenly things start taking a dark turn.
Wolfman producers likely prayed all the chatter would at least drive people to check out the horror film and see the true creature design, but instead, it merely overshadowed the final film. Not only did Invisible Man fans not show up, horror movie fans in general didn't turn out for this new vision of the Wolfman either. In the end, Wolfman only grossed $35 million worldwide on a $25 million budget. Who knew Universal's werewolf reboot would go out with such a whimper?